heard a shot. And the Jeep started rolling, and I didn't see anything, and I saw a shadow. That's all I saw.
The face of a woman in distress. Her husband attacked by an apparent stranger.
Just some unknown person in the woods who shot him for no apparent reason.
And I ran. I didn't know what else to do.
Wife Chacey Poynter appears distressed, but to those who know her, Chacey's a crocodile tears.
My first reaction in my head was, she killed him, didn't she?
Had Chacey
Okay, calm down. Where are you at?
an ambush on a remote dirt road?
Tell us what happened.
I heard a shot, and the Jeep started rolling, and I didn't see anything, and I saw a shadow. That's all I saw.
Robert Poynter has been gunned down, his distraught wife, Chacey, the only witness.
You want to go help me? My Jeep is stuck in the back, around the corner, and he's been shot in the head, please.
Royce City Police Department got a phone call around 10:45, 10:47 p.m. It's a Friday night. Lady, they could barely hear anything. She's running. They hear her breathing heavily. They get a ping from the 911 where her cell phone is. It's off County Road 2595, which is just south of the Royce City High School. The county road doesn't even really appear to be a county road. It looks more like a field. They go out there, and they respond very quickly. They're on scene less than 3 minutes.
Miss Poynter. You okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
I can't see his face.
Right.
Jeff Kovach, the Assistant District Attorney for Hunt County, would work hand in hand with police on the investigation that followed.
They get out there and they see a woman. She has blood on her. She's hyperventilating, saying that somebody shot her husband down the road.
He's around the corner.
Once they got there, they immediately made contact with her, and their body cameras were rolling.
Robert Poynter.
Robert Poynter?
Yeah, he's a firefighter.
Just breathe for me.
That's why it's blood on me.
Body cameras are used to record everything as it is.
Chacey, do you mind if I take some pictures of you real quick?
It removes interpretation. It removes, I forgot I said this, or I didn't say this, I said that. So it's a silent witness that's always credible.
The recordings would become an essential part of the detectives' hunt for a killer. As one officer interviewed the frantic woman, another, loaded gun in hand, went cautiously in search of the victim.
Probably half a mile down the road around a bend that's heavily wooded, Robert Poynter was sitting there in Chacey Poynter's Jeep with a shotgun blast to the head.
Officers quickly noted the peculiarities of the scene. An all-terrain vehicle, apparently stranded in the mud. A dead man in the driver's seat with a single gunshot wound to his head. No immediate signs of a struggle. Was this a random tragedy or a targeted attack? Stricken wife Chacey Poynter, now suddenly a widow, told officers that the victim was a first responder like them, part of a brotherhood of dedicated public servants.
Bob Poynter, otherwise known as Captain Robert Poynter, is a well-respected firefighter in University Park, which is a suburb of Dallas, Texas. Bob joined the fire department when he was just 28 years old, and he went on to have quite a distinguished career.
He was, I would say, a true firefighter's firefighter. I mean, he loved doing that, and he had zero fear of doing it. And he was very smart. He was always calm. He was never get worked up, never raised his voice. He just knew exactly what he was doing at all times.
In the town of Royce City, Texas, Captain Robert Poynter's quiet heroism was well known. Fellow firefighter Mark McAdams remembers the last blaze they ever fought together.
It was a 6-alarm fire, the biggest fire in our city's history. And there was a little girl, I don't know how old she was, 5 or 6, little blonde-headed girl. She was scared and she was crying. And Bob noticed. And there's a picture of him, and he's sweating, he's hot, He's bending down and he's hugging the little girl who he didn't even know, just letting her know, hey, we're fine, everybody's okay, we're safe. And that's who he was.
Captain Poynter met his first wife, Amy, at high school.
Bob's just, a good guy. He has married his childhood sweetheart, Amy.
The couple tied the knot in the late 80s. Together for 20 years, they had 2 daughters, Nicole and Natalie.
Man, he loved his girls. He would literally work his fingers to the bone for those girls. And he would take every opportunity he could to work extra jobs, to work extra hours, to work overtime, to do whatever he could to earn money. And that money was always for his girls.
His girls also included the toddler daughter of wife number 2, Chacey. As the only witness to his shooting, what could Chacey tell investigators?
We've been having problems, and I was coming to be him at the Jack in the Box so we could talk. We used to stop and get tacos at Jack in the Box when he'd come home late from work. When I went off the road, that's when I called him and I said, I need you to come help me. And he said, where are you? And I told him, I said, I'm on a dirt road. That's all I know. I don't know the numbers. And so
the body cam footage is quite powerful. It shows her panting and nervous and every emotion that she has.
Breathe for me, Miss Poynter. Calm down and breathe for me, okay? I got some questions. I'm trying to fill in some holes, okay?
Okay.
Have you ever been out here before?
No. I've never been out here before.
Only tonight, right now?
Yes. She claims that her truck got stuck in the mud and that her husband came out to rescue her.
Hours later, in a police station interview room, Chacey would explain to detectives that the couple had arranged to meet at a local fast food restaurant. On the way, she had taken a wrong turn onto an unmaintained track. Her Jeep stuck in the mud. She called her husband for help. Bob immediately rushed to his young wife's aid.
His truck can't make it all the way down because he doesn't have a 4-wheel drive vehicle. So he stops about halfway from the main road, and she meets him there, and she walks him back to her Jeep, and he gets in the Jeep.
And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, this guy comes out with a gun and shoots him.
A post-mortem would later find that Bob had received a single gunshot wound at point-blank range.
The wadding was still in the temple of the side of his head.
And I didn't see anything, and I saw a shadow. That's all I saw. And when I walked up to him, I yelled his name, and I just felt something on me. And I had my phone in my back pocket, and I ran. I didn't know what else to do.
Already, officers were noticing things that didn't quite add up.
Of course, that didn't make sense to the police department because they hadn't had a murder at that time in 12 years, and there's not just random people out in the woods killing people here in Roy City.
Let me ask you this, okay, and I need to be honest with me, okay? Were you out here with anyone else other than...
No, I was out here by myself.
It isn't adding up to cops, so they take Chacey in for questioning.
Detectives had a hunch that Bob's widow knew more than she was letting on. But what?
So she knew that this damsel in distress tactic, that this would, cause some distress in him, and that she would be able to lure him to wherever she needed him to be to get the job done.
In the USA, men are far more likely to be killed by someone they know than by a stranger. Detectives investigating the death of a respected firefighter naturally examined Bob Poynter's personal life, starting with his 7-year marriage.
Chacey and Robert didn't have the most ideal start to their relationship. They started off as an affair.
Bob and Chacey start seeing each other around December 2007.
Bob was still married then to his childhood sweetheart, Amy, but not for long. One of their daughters found out that her father was cheating on their mum.
Nicole tells Mom that Dad's having an affair with this other woman.
The other woman was younger, closer in age, in fact, to his teenage daughters than to him. It didn't stop her setting her sights on the popular captain. The team investigating Bob's murder discovered that what Chacey wanted, Chacey tended to get.
Chacey Tyler Mormon is a 20-year-old nurse's aide, and she's a flirt. She's been hanging around Bob's fire station, checks to see when Bob's going to be there, makes sure that he sees her, and little by little, she worms her way into his life.
She was younger, and she told him things he wanted to hear, and she knew exactly what she was doing. So she was the one that pursued him, and she really, really pushed it. And unfortunately, Bob, he took it all in.
Brian Frederick is a criminologist who has studied the Chacey Poynter story. He believes that Chacey saw Bob as a challenge.
So once Chacey Poynter set her sights on him, right, all bets were off. I imagine the fact that he was married and maybe unavailable was sort of a game for her, you know, and if she could get him away from his wife, that would be a true test of her ability to have some sort of control over him.
The scheme was a success. Bob and Amy's 20-year marriage fell apart. By May 2009, Chacey was pregnant with Bob's child.
December 28th, 2009, Chacey and Bob get married. They've been seeing each other now for 2 years, and now they have a little child together.
The honeymoon period, if there ever was one, wasn't to last. Bob's workmates would later reveal to investigators that they witnessed firsthand how volatile the newlyweds' relationship could be.
She had real bad mood swings. She would come sometimes and she would be smiling, and then the next thing you know, they would be in the office and she'd be screaming at him.
Chacey also proved to be a drain on the family finances.
She was a very manipulative person, a very materialistic person. I mean, when you looked at her text messages with Robert, it was one big purchase or vacation to the next. That's how she seemed to live. It was like, what's my next big purchase? What's my next vacation? That's kind of how she lives.
Rapidly building an intriguing picture of a roller coaster romance, detectives discovered that by 2012, the relationship was already heading for stormy waters. About
3 years into this marriage, Chacey and Bob are not getting along so well. They're fighting.
It was pretty evident that there were problems. You could see it, and in phone conversations, conversations they would have at the fire station. She was sometimes really loud, and she would call him every name in the book when they would get into arguments about stuff.
Chacey would later confess in a police interview that she and her husband had been growing apart. She transformed her physical appearance and had been pursuing interests that did not include Bob.
She says Bob doesn't find her as attractive anymore, but she's getting this renewed sense of confidence, and she starts going out to the nightclubs and hitting the bars and meeting men.
Chacey Poynter lost a lot of weight, and she started getting attention from all these other men.
She starts meeting a lot of men, and not just meeting them, but she's hooking up with them.
Just from knowing her, how, from the stories I heard from Bob, she was always about her first.
She even left their 4-year-old in the care of Bob's teenage daughter, Natalie, while she went out to meet lovers.
She's so bold that she actually has Natalie stay at home to babysit the 4-year-old child while she goes out cheating on her dad.
Chacey didn't seem to have too much concern about being caught, and that could be because she was just brazen or because she was wanting to be caught. But she would do things like leave her Facebook open with messages that can easily be read by anyone.
And in an ironic twist of fate, just as it had been one of Bob's daughters who exposed his affair with Chacey, it was also one of his daughters who spotted provocative messages from Chacey to another man on the screen of her open laptop.
So she goes to her dad and she tells her dad, Chacey's cheating on you. And she shows the evidence.
Bob confessed to his closest colleague that the news had left him devastated, but that he wasn't willing just yet to call time on the relationship.
He had gone through a divorce before, and he did not want to go through that again. And it was all because of his daughter. You know, he did not want to hurt her that way, and he expressed that to me a lot.
He says to Chacey, let's try to patch things up.
He did not want to leave that baby girl of his.
Taking statements from the deceased firefighter's friends and family, detectives built a picture of a marriage that had by 2016 turned seriously sour. But neither Bob nor Chacey was ready to end it. Did they have the same motives for sticking with their faltering relationship? In late summer, Bob suggested a make-or-break family holiday.
Plans this vacation to Mexico, and he tells his friends at work, we're really going to try to work things out. I'm taking her on this romantic trip.
Robert had found out that Chacey had been cheating on him a few days prior to the vacation, but they went down there anyway to try to, work things out one last time. And from what we could tell, it just didn't go very well at all. She was texting two of her different men that she was having affairs with constantly over this time period. So it appears whatever they wanted to accomplish, or Robert at least wanted to accomplish in Mexico, did not happen. So it doesn't appear to have been a very successful, from his point of view, vacation and bringing the family back together.
He called me the day they got back, and he told me then, he's like, that's it. When he called me, I just said, hey, how's it going, brother? And he said, not good. That's it. Contacting my lawyer.
Bob didn't seem really sure where his relationship was going in September. He emailed his divorce attorney. At the same time, he was text messaging Chacey, trying to find out if they could talk and get together and reconcile.
He files for divorce, but he doesn't actually go through with it.
It looked to detectives as though Bob still had hopes of saving the 7-year-old marriage. What they didn't yet know was if Chacey Poynter had wanted the same thing, or did she have something else in mind?
She probably delighted in being this person who ran these long cons and came up with these plans and was able to get away with them.
On September 8, 2016, Bob Poynter sent his divorce attorney a decisive message. I'm thinking of a surprise attack, he said. I want to sell the house and take full custody of our daughter. 36 hours later, the firefighter was dead. Combing the couple's electronic devices after the murder, investigators found the note to his lawyer and began to form a theory.
We believe that she read the message he had sent to his attorney.
When he told her that he was going to get a lawyer and file for divorce, he was dead the next day. And so she knew that she was fixing to lose everything.
But it was when they began to search Chacey's phone that things became really interesting for detectives.
If you look at the text messages we got from her cell phone, she was having multiple affairs. There were 4 different affairs that had gone on that we know of within the last 12 months.
Dr. Frederick recognizes one trait of potential killers that Chacey Poynter was showing in abundance.
Psychopaths are known for being sexually promiscuous. And, it's probably not a requirement that they be attractive, right? But, she did have sort of this femininity about her that she most likely used to her advantage quite successfully.
Not only was she cheating, the messages suggested to cops that Chacey was manipulating her lovers, telling each of them that she wanted Bob out of her life.
She was running this con on multiple men, almost in an indiscriminate way, kind of like just throwing anything at the wall and seeing what would stick.
Charm, lies, manipulation, these are all characteristics of a psychopath.
She talks about wanting him dead in multiple of these text messages to all these different men. Now, most of the men didn't take the bait. They told her, leave him, call the police. The normal reactions that most people would have if that were true.
In a series of almost 10,000 text messages extracted by digital experts, Chacey offered her lovers a reason to help her escape her marriage.
Chacey starts complaining that Bob is taking testosterone and steroids, she says, because he's treating a low testosterone problem, and she says it's making him angry and abusive.
It is very interesting that Chacey was already pinning these behaviors on Robert. It's almost as if she was already building a case against why he was a horrible person and why she had to do away with him.
Chacey Poynter used this sort of damsel in distress tactic when she had all these lovers, and she let them all know that her husband was being abusive.
It was a new angle for investigators. Was there any truth in Chacey's claims? And if so, was this a potential motive for murder? They questioned those who knew him best.
Bob's grown daughter, Natalie, she's 16 at the time, moves in with them, and she lives there for about 6 months. And she says she never, in that time that she lived with them, ever saw any evidence at all of any abuse.
Chacey claimed that Robert was abusive towards her, and we found no evidence of that. We talked with his ex-wife and said Robert was a big old teddy bear. She did not act like a battered woman in any way that we could find. There was never any phone calls to police. None of her friends got up on the witness stand and testified to that. People who were friends testified the opposite, that Chacey was the dominant person in this relationship.
Cops suspected it was all a fiction designed to entrap her lovers, to let them all know she was being abused so that a knight in shining armor might come to her rescue.
She had so many of them that she was bound to find one that was so wrapped up in her story and who he thought she was that he might have seen it as an opportunity to save the person who he admired. I mean, this is a Machiavellian trait, right? Cunning, manipulative, and unscrupulous.
On the morning after the murder, detectives felt they had identified the man willing to be Chacey's stooge. On her phone search history, a link to a photo on the Facebook page of a man called Michael Garza, accessed on the day of her husband's death. Confronted with his name, Chacey's story changed.
And now she finally admits she knows who this shooter was. It was Michael Garza. It was her boyfriend.
You shot Robert. Can you say that louder for me, please?
She admitted to her affair with Michael Garza, admitted that they had had sex the day of the murder, and said, I don't know, maybe he did this.
At first, she insisted she had not known that Garza would be lurking in the shadows alongside the dirt road that night. But within minutes, her version of events shifted again. The relationship had begun a couple of months earlier, and Michael had fallen hard.
Michael is just, he's bananas over her. He is madly in love with Chacey.
Garza seemed to be quickly enamored with her and soon began saying he'd do anything for her or anything that she wanted him to do.
Chacey has been, she's been making the rounds with the guys, and she has been planning this story, and anyone who will listen, that her husband Bob is abusive and he has these horrible anger issues.
Michael Garza is the one who took the bait, so I think she was kind of baiting all of these men to see who would tell her what she wanted to hear, and then she finally found that Michael Garza.
But murder, Chacey told her interrogators, had never been the plan.
During this interview, she told police that she wanted Bob to know what it's like to be bullied. She claimed that Garza was supposed to show up just to threaten Bob and tell him to leave her alone.
Was this version of events believable? Had Michael Garza really gone rogue? The scheme Chacey laid out for detectives was an elaborate one. On the evening of September 9th, Chacey had contacted her husband.
Chacey texts Bob and she says, yeah, I think we can really work this out. She says, I really love you, Bob. I really do. And she's texting in all caps, emphasizing that. Over the next couple of hours, she engages in these text messages with Bob, kind of like a cat and mouse game. And she's laying out this trap.
Her plan was, she told him, we're going to meet up at Jack in the Box in Royce City for late night tacos. And that's something that they used to do. So he worked long hours and he might come home late at night and he would bring home Jack in the Box tacos for her.
And then some more time goes by and she says, I'm almost there. The GPS says I'm 3 miles away. 15 minutes later, Bob sends a text message and says, long 3 miles. In fact, all of this 2 hours worth of texting back and forth, this little game of hers, she never had any intention of meeting Bob at a restaurant. She's actually been having sex with Michael Garza all afternoon, all night, and they have a plan.
Chacey set in motion a plot to lure Bob to a remote rural spot.
She goes to this place on County Road 2595, which is a very secluded area. It's not a regularly traveled road.
From there, she sent Bob another message. She needed his help, she said.
She pretended to get her Jeep stuck.
Bob, by nature and being her man, immediately responded to help her.
Well, Bob's first responder instincts kick in right away, and he jumps in his truck and he heads out to rescue his damsel in distress.
It was a decision that cost Bob his life, but one that did not surprise those who loved him.
I had no idea that he was going out there. And he wouldn't tell anybody, that he was doing that. He would just do it. I'm going to help. That's just how he was.
When he reached the dirt road, Bob found Chacey waiting at the turnoff. She told him the Jeep was a little way down the track. At this point, Chacey would tell detectives Garza was meant to confront her husband, perhaps rough him up, but nothing more.
This was all Michael Garza's idea. I didn't even know he had a gun.
But then she admitted to a plan of what they were going to do after the fact, which was going to be to burn the truck that he was in.
Whatever Chacey had intended, the outcome for Bob Poynter was a sudden and brutal death.
She met him there. She walked back to the road and she walked him down that road, hand in hand.
After he sat in the vehicle, he was immediately shot in the head with a shotgun at close range.
Had Chacey known what was coming? Had she planned the whole thing? Or was she as shocked and devastated as she appeared to be?
Police don't believe Chacey's story. It just isn't adding up. They know she's involved. Chacey is arrested and charged with conspiracy to commit murder.
But could they prove it? The only person who could help answer that question was Michael Garza. He was, at first, nowhere to be found.
They issue a warrant for Michael Garza, but he's gone. He's already hit the road.
But you can see from cell phone records him rapidly leaving the area.
After shooting Captain Robert Poynter dead, Chacey Poynter's boyfriend Michael Garza was quick to skip town.
After she calls 911, he goes back to his house. He gets in his truck. He's a long-haul truck driver, and immediately starts contacting his boss to try to pick up a route so he can get out of town.
But Garza didn't stay gone for long.
He goes off for a while, and the murder happened on Friday night. He finds out that people are looking for him, of course. It's on the news, and his family's calling him.
He goes back. He turns himself in, but he's not talking.
He eventually turns himself in and lawyers up on Sunday.
With his lawyer alongside him, Michael Garza refuses to talk. Detectives still had nothing concrete to prove who was responsible for Bob Poynter's death.
Police still need some hard evidence to connect Michael Garza to the murder. And then 5 weeks later, they get it. A farmer finds a shotgun out in his field.
That shotgun was traced back to Garza's brother.
We had his Facebook photo, which he quickly took down, but we got it before he did, of him holding that shotgun. So for Michael Garza's case, it was a big piece of evidence that we had. We also found shotgun shells that were fired by that shotgun on Michael Garza's front porch and the flower bed around it. So for him, it was a big piece of evidence.
Presented with the evidence, Garza turned on Chacey.
Whenever you have these types of cases where two people work together to commit a murder, they're going to point the finger at each other. It's all that other person's fault.
Michael Garza insisted Chacey had acted alone.
His story was basically that he hadn't seen Chacey since sometime around 9:30. He thought she was abused, so he gave her a shotgun and some man-killing slugs, and that she did it all herself.
Chacey, meanwhile, was sticking with her story.
What she tried to do was say that this was basically all Michael Garza's plan, and that she had nothing at all to do with it.
Who killed your husband? Who shot Robert? Can you say that louder for me, please?
She was trying to do what she always did, which is save her own skin. And it's not a surprise to me that she would say and do anything to try to keep herself from going to prison for the rest of her life.
With no confession from either suspect, prosecutors would have to try to persuade a jury at trial that Chacey Poynter and Michael Garza were both guilty of murder. They needed to establish a motive. If Chacey had wanted out of her marriage to Bob, why simply not divorce him? Investigators found the answer. It lay in the couple's financial arrangements.
I believe that it was totally about the money. Robert Poynter made very good money. He made over $100,000 a year as a captain with the University Park Fire Department. He worked a lot of overtime. He bought her a lot of nice things, let her redo the houses like she wanted, bought her a Jeep. She wanted to get breast enhancements. So she became accustomed to that lifestyle that he could provide for her.
Perhaps Bob suspected that this lifestyle was part of what made him attractive to Chacey. When they married, he asked her to sign a prenup.
And it gives you the indication that perhaps Robert didn't fully trust Chacey. After all, he didn't really know her very well at the time that they were getting married. And perhaps he just wanted to safeguard his assets in case she wasn't very sincere about her actual love for him.
The prenup stated that Chacey would not be entitled to Bob's money if they ever divorced. Instead, it would be split between Bob's 3 daughters, 2 from his first marriage and 1, his youngest, with Chacey. On the other hand, Bob's death would leave Chacey sitting pretty.
Police find there was a life insurance policy, a $680,000 life insurance policy that Bob had. And Chacey had talked him into changing it so that instead of his daughters, she would be the primary beneficiary.
Now, if Robert Poynter died, that prenuptial agreement doesn't come into play. And she was the beneficiary of his life insurance policy, which was worth over $600,000. She would have got a pension on top of that, a survivor benefit pension, all the assets. I mean, it was worth, probably close to $1 million of total assets that she would have got.
Armed with a motive, the Hunt County DA's office brought new charges against their primary suspect.
Chacey's charge actually has now been upgraded to capital murder. She's accused of conspiring with Michael Garza to kill her husband in order to get that money.
Garza was the first to face the jury.
I felt it was a good case against Michael Garza, but I didn't think it was a slam dunk.
Now, Michael Garza had actually taken the stand in his own defense during his trial, and he actually tried to put the blame on Chacey.
Garza told the court that he couldn't have murdered Robert Poynter because he was tending to a sick animal on the family farm. He repeated his claim that he had simply supplied the weapon, and it was Chacey who'd pulled the trigger. Would the jury buy it? Prosecutors had evidence of the trucker's willingness to go to extreme lengths for his lover.
I knew that we needed the right jury to convict him, and luckily we did.
On July 20, 2018, Michael Garza was found guilty of murder and sentenced to 99 years in prison. It was Chacey Poynter's turn to stand in the dock.
I felt much stronger about that case. We had her at the scene of the crime. We had her text messages where they're talking about getting rid of Robert Poynter, and then we had her statement to law enforcement.
Chacey continued to deny murder and to point the finger at Michael Garza. The plan was all his, she claimed. He had taken the initiative after hearing of her abuse at the hands of Bob Poynter. Once again, witnesses were all too willing to contradict her claims.
We had a big gallery out there. All of Robert's family was there. A lot of people from the University Park Fire Department was there. And several of them testified in the trial to talk about the relationship between Chacey and Robert that they had observed.
A forensic expert took the stand to talk about crime scene evidence. He told the court that Chacey had blood spatter all over her neck, legs, and arms. She claimed she got it when she jumped into the Jeep to check on Robert. But the pattern of blood did not match up. It looked as though she had been very close to Bob in the moment he was shot. It was another claim that just didn't stack up, and the jury was not fooled.
Her story was bad. It was not well rehearsed. I mean, her defense attorneys were kind of leading her to say certain things that clearly weren't true because other evidence contradicted what she said. But when you look at the text messages, it's pretty clear that she was the one who initiated this, that she wanted it to happen, and she wanted it to happen quick.
Chacey had not anticipated the weight of digital evidence that would stack up against her.
It's a lot easier to manipulate a man you're having sex with than law enforcement and people who can go look at all of your text messages.
Chacey was found guilty and sentenced to life in prison.
Her earliest chance at parole would be the year 2046. At that time, she'll be almost 60 years old.
For detectives and prosecutors, it was a good verdict.
I believe she was the most culpable person here. Michael Garza was the person she found to do this, but she was the driving force behind this murder.
I would have been completely happy with the death penalty for both of them. They didn't give him that option of life. So, my head was, it would have been fine with me if they got that too.
The investigation into Bob Poynter's murder had exposed Chacey's multiple affairs and a plot to cash in on his insurance policy.
On the very night that Chacey was having her husband Bob killed, she was actually texting with another lover and planning to hook up with him later that night. This was just a classic tale of, sex, lies, and greed.
What's going on?
My husband, he went to go help me. My Jeep is stuck in the back around the corner, and he's been shot.
I knew as soon as he told me that she had something to do with it.
And I saw a shadow. That's all.
And it just, as soon as he told me, it struck me that that's who it was. I didn't know all the details, but I knew she had something to do with it.
I think you're full of crap. I'm telling you,
I don't know who pulled the trigger.
With Bob's scheming wife jailed, the insurance money went to his 3 daughters.
She was the biggest liar that I've ever seen in any 11 years of doing this. And she was pretty good at it for a while.
I don't know if she did it. I don't know that.
When you talk to her family members, they didn't seem surprised that she did this. I think that says something. I knew from a young age that she was an awful person. She may be in that sociopath category, just couldn't feel anything for anybody but herself.
The opposite of her much-admired husband, an all-American hero.
He was a class act, a true brother in the fire service, a great dad, and he's just a good man overall and a good friend, and I miss him every day.
Captain Bob Poynter's send-off revealed how his death had struck at the core of this tight community on the edge of Dallas.
His funeral on September 15th, 2016 was very emotional and very beautiful. It was attended by his fellow firefighters from the University Park Fire Department, as well as firefighters and police officers from all over the state of Texas. They came to pay their respects.
I don't even know how to describe it. It was, you've never been to a firefighter funeral, just, all the bagpipes and the other firemen and police officers, it was, from the surrounding communities coming, and just seeing his, family, his mom, who's, one of the sweetest ladies ever, and watching, the distress on her face and his daughters. At the end, they always ring the bell. It's like they set the tones off, and where his time is over, and that was rough, knowing that was it. It was the worst day in my time there, 20 years.
Chacey thought that she could seduce, scheme, lie, and cheat her way through life, using one man after another to get what she wanted.
Sex, lies, money, and murder. I mean, that's really what this case is about.
She used social media to ensnare men as her lovers, to smear her husband Bob as an abuser, and to recruit the man who would one day agree to kill for her. In doing so, she left a digital trail that would one day be unraveled by homicide detectives, a trail that would lead them directly to her door. That was
from the 9-1, switch that over, that's the young. I was at the West Coast, now I'm in the East Coast.